Well, hey there, folks. So I've been reminiscing a little bit by watching a cartoon from my childhood, Talespin. It's a show from 1990 produced by Disney. To briefly explain the synopsis of this, the creators basically took some of the more recognizable characters from 1967's The Jungle Book, put it in a blender with Indiana Jones movies and a little bit of Errol Flynn, and made this cartoon. So the main characters, you have Baloo, an experienced bush pilot, Kit Cloud Kicker, a resourceful kid who is now Baloo's navigator. Rebecca Cunningham, a business school graduate who sees Baloo's air cargo service as a great entrepreneurial opportunity. Don Carnage, leader of the pirates whom Kit used to work for, and Shere Khan, a no-nonsense pragmatic tycoon who owns interests in oil, electronics, retail, mining, and whatever else he may come up with. Now let's get into the class analysis. We talked a little bit about these characters already and kind of gave them a brief overview, but let's talk more about specifics. So Baloo, in my opinion, would be considered more of a straight-up proletariat. He works to live and enjoys his friends and is loyal to a fault. He can be emotional and kind of lock people out and feels easily alienated by his friends at times. But overall, he has a sense of, he likes money, but it's not something that he lives for. He just wants to do what he loves, basically. So let's enter into Rebecca Cunningham, also known as Becky. The reason that she is set up is because after Baloo defaulted on his plane note for 6 payments, Rebecca Cunningham comes in and takes this defaulted loan and business and creates Hire for Hire and buys the Sea Duck, which is Baloo's plane. For Becky, she's more of a middle class or petite bourgeois who wishes she could be more like a Shere Khan and, has that sort of, wishes for that sort of power. She also has a daughter named Molly who becomes very close to Baloo and Kit over time and are seen as sort of substitute father figures, I guess you could say. Now, before I go any further, I do want to say is that there are many bureaucratic and administration type in this show. But these aren't really that interesting to me. Overall, they're kind of one-note characters. Like, okay, yeah, they're stuffy bureaucratic folks who are just like, well, we need to get this done. And so they do that. They say they say what needs to be said and keep the plot moving. It's not really that interesting. So we talked a little bit about Kit Cloud Kicker already. He's an orphan. He is somewhere in between the lumpen and then a proletariat. In the sense of he's an orphan, he doesn't know who his parents were. He joins Don Carnage and spends some time working with them. He has the opportunity to take a stone in the first episode and steals it from Don Carnage and decides to join this Baloo character, this bush pilot. From there, he kind of sees the error of his ways, this and that, and becomes more of a proletariat in a lot of ways. But Kit, in some ways, though, also wants social mobility, as a lot of young kids do, and he sees the stability to a point that Rebecca Cunningham, as well as her daughter Molly, have. And he kind of wishes for that lifestyle. I think that he wants more of that family atmosphere. But ultimately, I think to a certain point, that is sort of a middle class aspiration. To move on, and to finish up here, I do want to say is that I brought up trust and friendship earlier. Now, I'm not strictly a Marxist-Leninist, and I'm not a dialectical materialist or a historical materialist. What I'm presenting here is a vulgar analysis of these characters. That's all this is. This is a nice short little video here. We're not going to waste too much time. In my opinion, trust and friendship are more valuable in the lumpen. And to a point, in the petite bourgeoisie. The reason I bring this up is because it's very important. I think that a lot of MLs today and a lot of other left-wing folks are embracing the lumpen far more than the proletariat, because they believe, number one, that the proletariat really doesn't exist, so they would rather point to the lumpen and say, let's go for the Crips and the Bloods and all these other folks. I think it's a little more complicated than that, and they don't necessarily care about, capitalism or not. They feel more loyalty to the crew. So let's talk about Don Carnage a little bit, with that being said. Don Carnage is the leader of the pirates. He is firmly a lumpen proletariat who demands loyalty from his crew, but will run away from danger and leave his men to save himself. Now, this is not something indicative of all lumpen proles. There is a different sense of loyalty between proles and lumpens. For the proletariat, loyalty doesn't necessarily have any strings, but it can. For lumpen, loyalty is based on your skill set and how proficient you are, and whether or not you are a snitch. It's a loyalty based on what you can provide to your crew, much like the Mafia or groups like the Crips. Everyone has a role to fill. The thieves, the lookouts, the dealers, the shooters, enforcers, and many others. Your resume is what the streets tell about you. If you're a dealer, they'll say he's got the good stuff. If you're a shooter, has he ever left witnesses? Did he do it clean? Did he actually make sure that they were dead? Etc., etc. Also with the lumpen, they may have connections to the bourgeoisie to keep them out of jail and to get them some jobs when there's a drought. Or, in other words, a lull in their brand of business. This is expressed, I say this because there's an episode fairly early on where Shere Khan cuts a deal with Don Carnage to raise the oil prices for a brief time. Unfortunately, Baloo and crew ultimately break that up and forces Shere Khan to break that, because ultimately it was basically about the supply lines, this and that, and then, Don Carnage ultimately cuts a deal with them. And I think that needs to be recognized. Ultimately, I don't hold the same view as Marx necessarily on the lumpen being just these evil criminals, this and that, but I think that they are far more resourceful and they are not a monolith. And I think that needs to be realized. So to finish this up, I'm going to try to make this fairly short. I'm not sure where it's all going to look, but basically, we have Shere Khan. Now, Shere Khan is bourgeoisie. Shere Khan is a businessman who is very much focused on his work. In a lot of ways, I see he's on the Machiavelli/Rockefeller tier. Machiavelli in the sense that he's able to get folks to do what they need to do to better himself and his company, which in a lot of ways can be interchangeable, in my opinion anyway. And I've seen some other episodes of this. I haven't seen too much evidence of this, but in my opinion, I think that he started out kind of like Baloo or Becky, and he made his mistakes, but he learned from them. And he achieved more as time went on and sacrificed himself to become this leader of this conglomerate that exists. And I know, apologies if I use words like conglomerate and corporation. I do realize that these are very specific definitions. So, just to say, I do realize that. So, just to continue on here a little bit, I was going to say is everything in his life is planned out, but he's adaptable, and he realizes that plans can change. He will reach outside of his kingdom when necessary. Loyalty for Khan and the bourgeoisie is fleeting and transactional. What have you done for me lately? The bourgeoisie still look at the proles, petite and lumpen with contempt, but sees the lower classes as pawns to be sacrificed for the greater good, or the greater vision, in some cases. There will always be loyalists who will go down with the ship out of misplaced honor, not always for monetary or positional gain. Basically what I'm saying with this is that a lot of the time there are folks who want to reach that spot in some cases and want to be like Shere Khan. Others just feel loyal to be next to him, and that they see him as a father figure, a guardian, if you will. That doesn't always work out. So, in closing, I do want to say that this is a show I remembered as a 5-year-old watching. This came out in 1990, and yes, I was born in 1985. And this show does have a lot of class separation in it. I think it is. There's a lot of value to really watching these shows and then having at least some idea of what class consciousness is, and seeing these shows and saying, "Oh, this is what it's really about." And then you can be able to dissect that a bit more and understand these differences. Does that mean that, you can automatically, overthrow a system or destroy capitalism? No. But it makes it easier, and it makes it more cognizant to say, okay, if the system falls, where are people going to go? And who are they going to see their loyalty with? And to me, that's much more important than trying to, get them all on your side, this and that. I think that's a little more complicated. But with that, I think that's about it. It looks like I've reached about the 11.5-minute mark. Not too bad. So I'll probably edit this down a little bit and see how this goes. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.
Mr. Khan!
Speak.
I have an update on the stone, sir.
It's been found?
Not exactly, sir. But you'll be happy to know we located our pilot, safe and...
Where is the stone?
It's been stolen.
By whom?
Air pilots.
I've spent years building Khan Industries into the biggest corporation in the world. And I've discovered that business is like a jungle. You see, there are the eaters, and there are the eatens. Find those pirates.
Yes, sir.
Bon appetit.